Western movies are deceiving. Films have created an indestructible image of the Wild West. A lone cowboy, a trusty horse, and of course, a Winchester rifle in his hands. Dozens of shots without reloading, enemies falling one after another. This is how, according to Hollywood, the endless prairies were conquered. But what if this image is just a beautiful legend created by skilled marketers and directors? Watch the video to the end, and you'll find out which forgotten weapon was more decisive in critical moments than any multi-shot rifle, and why the U.S. Army deliberately rejected the symbol of the
These
Wild
woods
West.
can feel a bit lonely sometimes. That's true.
The legend of the Winchester was born not on the battlefield, but in the pages of advertising catalogs. Oliver Winchester was a brilliant marketer who sold not just a weapon, but a dream. He created the image of a rifle that conquered the West, and that image proved incredibly enduring. The 1873 model became the pinnacle of this advertising campaign. The ability to use the same cartridges as in a Colt revolver was a real revolution for the ordinary settler or cowboy. Having one type of ammunition for both rifles and revolvers was a convenience that could not be overestimated when far from civilization. Quick reloading with the Henry clip allowed for a series of shots in a short time. In Hollywood movies, heroes fire 15 to 20 rounds without taking the stock off their shoulder. In practice, this was not quite the case, but the rate of fire was truly impressive by the standards of the time. The Winchester became the people's rifle. It was bought by farmers, cowboys, bandits, and sheriffs. It was relatively light, reliable, and easy to use, which made it ideal for the civilian market. However, its fame in real combat situations is greatly exaggerated. The rifle cartridge used in the Winchester was too weak for military needs. It lost its effectiveness at long ranges, and its stopping power was insufficient against serious opponents. That is why the U.S. Army never adopted the Winchester as its primary weapon. The military needed power and range, not the rapid fire of a weak cartridge. The legend of the Winchester is a story of commercial success, not military superiority. What do you think made the Winchester so legendary? Its actual characteristics or brilliant marketing? Share your opinion in the comments. While settlers and cowboys were buying Winchesters, the U.S. Army opted for a completely different weapon. It was the single-shot Springfield Model 1873 rifle, nicknamed the Trapdoor for its distinctive hinged breech. At first glance, it was a step backward compared to multi-shot systems. However, the military had its own logic, based on harsh combat experience. The Army needed not rapid fire, but power, accuracy, and reliability. And the Springfield fully met these requirements. The main advantage of this rifle was its cartridge, the .45-70 Government. It was an incredibly powerful round, capable of stopping any enemy at a distance of up to a kilometer. The bullet, weighing more than 25 grams, had tremendous energy. Where the Winchester bullet only wounded, the Springfield bullet inflicted damage that was incompatible with continuing the fight. It was a weapon designed not for saloon shootouts, but for real battles. Its stopping power was absolute. The Trapdoor's design was extremely simple and reliable. The minimum number of moving parts meant that the rifle rarely broke down and was insensitive to dirt and dust. In the harsh conditions of the Wild West, this was a vital advantage. One shot, one target. This philosophy required discipline and accuracy from soldiers. The Army command believed that multi-shot rifles encouraged soldiers to fire indiscriminately and inefficiently, leading to a waste of ammunition. Every shot from a Springfield was calibrated and accurate. Soldiers underwent extensive training, learning to shoot at long ranges and hit targets on the first try. It was this tactic that brought victory in clashes with the enemy. If the Springfield was a soldier's weapon, the Sharps rifle was an instrument that changed the very economy and ecology of the Wild West. It was a heavy, single-shot weapon designed for one purpose, shooting at extreme distances. And it was this weapon that caused the disappearance of millions of bison herds. Sharps rifles, especially the .50-90 caliber model, nicknamed the Big 50, were true monsters. They fired heavy lead bullets that retained their energy at distances unattainable by any other weapon. An experienced hunter could hit a target the size of a bison at a distance of more than a mile. It was this weapon that made industrial bison hunting possible. Hunters armed with Sharps rifles could destroy entire herds without being noticed. They took up position on a hill and methodically, shot by shot, exterminated animals that did not even understand where the threat was coming from. This hunt had not only economic, but also military significance. Bison were the basis of life for the Indian tribes of the Great Plains. The destruction of the herds was part of a strategy to undermine their ability to resist. The Sharps rifle was too heavy and slow for cavalry combat. Its recoil was so strong that after a few dozen shots, the shooter's shoulder would turn into one big bruise. But for professional hunters, it was a price they were willing to pay. The rifle's design was extremely reliable. The drop-block bolt allowed for quick reloading and withstood the pressure of the most powerful black powder cartridges. The accuracy of the Sharps became legendary. It was these rifles, not Army carbines, that cleared the plains, paving the way for railroads and settlers. They won not a tactical battle, but a strategic war for resources and territory. When talking about Wild West weapons, it is impossible to ignore revolvers. And here the undisputed king was the Colt Single Action Army, model 1873, better known as the Peacemaker. This weapon became as much a symbol of the era as the cowboy hat. Before the Colt came along, revolvers were complex, unreliable, and used a percussion cap ignition system. The Peacemaker, on the other hand, was designed for a single-piece cartridge, which greatly simplified and sped up reloading. Its appearance changed the rules of close combat. The design of the revolver was ingenious in its simplicity. It had only a few moving parts, a sturdy frame, and a reliable single-action trigger mechanism. This revolver could withstand the harshest conditions and continue to fire. The single-action trigger mechanism required the hammer to be cocked before each shot. This made shooting slower than with modern revolvers, but significantly increased accuracy. Each shot was deliberate and controlled. The Peacemaker was adopted by the U.S. Army and remained in service for more than 20 years. But it gained real fame on the civilian market. Everyone carried it, from sheriffs and Texas Rangers to bandits and gamblers. The most popular caliber was the .45 Colt, a powerful cartridge capable of stopping any opponent with a single shot. There was also a version chambered for the .44-40 cartridge, compatible with the Winchester rifle, which made it the perfect pair for any traveler. Legends about shooters capable of firing quickly and accurately with a Colt were not an exaggeration. Techniques such as fanning, quickly flicking the trigger with the palm of the hand, were real, although not as effective as in the movies. The reliability of the Colt was phenomenal. It continued to function in dust, dirt, and cold weather. It was this quality that made it an indispensable survival tool on the frontier. The ergonomics of the revolver are considered among the best in history. The handle fit perfectly in the hand, and the balance of the weapon allowed it to be intuitively aimed at the target. Even today, many shooters consider the Peacemaker the gold standard of comfort. Thus, if rifles decided the outcome of battles at a distance, the Colt was the king of close combat. It was the last resort in a dispute and the main tool for personal protection. But was the Colt the only king of revolvers? In the next chapter, we will look at its main competitor, a weapon with a surprising advantage. Although the Colt dominated the market, it had a serious competitor, the Smith & Wesson Model 3 revolver. This weapon had one key advantage that made it much more effective in certain situations. We are talking about reloading speed. The Smith & Wesson design was revolutionary for its time. The revolver had a break-open frame. By pressing a latch, the shooter could break the revolver in half, causing the extractor to automatically eject all 6 spent cartridges at once. This allowed the weapon to be reloaded in a matter of seconds. While the owner of a Colt had to push out each cartridge case with a ramrod and then insert new cartridges through the loading window, the owner of an S&W was already ready for battle. In a protracted firefight, this advantage could be life-saving. The U.S. Army also appreciated this feature and adopted a modification called the Schofield. Cavalrymen especially appreciated the ability to reload quickly with one hand without letting go of the reins. Smith & Wesson revolvers were popular not only in the United States. They were purchased by the armies of many countries, including the Russian Empire. The Russian .44 Russian caliber model became one of the most widely used military revolvers of the time. Some famous figures of the Wild West preferred S&W. For example, Wyatt Earp, according to some sources, used it in the famous shootout at the OK Corral. Outlaw Jesse James also valued this weapon for its rapid-fire capability. However, the break-open design had its drawbacks. It was considered less durable than the Colt's solid frame. Because of this, S&W could not use cartridges as powerful as the .45 Colt. In the shadow of legendary rifles and revolvers lies another undeservedly forgotten conqueror of the West, the short-barreled, double-barreled shotgun. This simple but incredibly effective weapon was a nightmare for any bandit and the best friend of sheriffs, stagecoach guards, and bankers. The shotgun, often called a coach gun, had one undeniable advantage: tremendous firepower at close range. A single shot with buckshot created a whole bunch of striking elements, leaving the enemy no chance. It was practically impossible to miss with a shotgun at a distance of 10 to 15 meters. That is why shotguns became the standard weapon of Wells Fargo stagecoach guards. A guard sitting next to the driver could stop an attack by several robbers with a single shot. The psychological effect of seeing two huge barrels pointed at you was enormous. The design of the shotgun was extremely simple and reliable. Two barrels, two triggers, minimal mechanics. Such a weapon worked in all conditions and almost never misfired. Unlike rifled weapons, shotguns did not require the shooter to have outstanding skills. Intuitive aiming in a huge area of effect made it accessible to anyone who needed to protect their home or property. Farmers and ranch owners appreciated it for this quality. In urban environments where distances were short, the shotgun was the weapon of choice for many law enforcement officers. Famous lawmen such as Doc Holliday often used the shotgun as their primary means of maintaining order. The short barrels made the weapon maneuverable and convenient for use in confined spaces, inside a stagecoach, in a bank hallway, or behind a saloon bar. It could be easily concealed under a cloak or behind a counter. Thus, the shotgun occupied a unique tactical niche. It was not a weapon for duels on the main street, but for the real dirty work of protecting life and property at extremely short ranges. It is rarely shown in Westerns as the hero's main weapon because it lacks romantic appeal. But in reality, its contribution to establishing law and order was enormous. So, we have rifles for long-range combat and revolvers for personal defense. How did these systems work together? In the next chapter, we will look at the issue of ammunition compatibility. The choice of weapon in the Wild West was often dictated not only by its characteristics, but also by the availability of ammunition. In a world where the nearest store might be hundreds of miles away, the ability to use a single cartridge for different weapons was a huge advantage. This is where the 1873 Winchester and the Colt revolver formed the perfect tandem. The 4440 Winchester centerfire cartridge was originally designed for rifles, but was quickly adapted for revolvers. This allowed cowboys or travelers to carry a single supply of ammunition that was suitable for both long-barreled and short-barreled weapons. Such unification was the height of practicality. It solved a huge logistical problem. There was no need to worry about what cartridges to buy and how to distribute them. One cartridge belt provided ammunition for all occasions. However, this convenience came at a price. The 4440 cartridge was, in essence, a pistol cartridge. Its power was sufficient for hunting deer or self-defense at close range, but it was greatly inferior to real rifle ammunition. Let's compare it to the Army 4570 for the Springfield rifle. The Winchester bullet weighed about 13 grams, while the Springfield bullet weighed more than 26 grams. The difference in initial energy and ballistics was enormous. At distances over 150-200 meters, the trajectory of the .44-40 bullet became very steep, and its energy dropped sharply. This made accurate shooting at long ranges virtually impossible. The Springfield rifle, on the other hand, was effective at distances of up to a kilometer. Thus, two different philosophies of weaponry developed in the Wild West. The first was civilian, emphasizing convenience and versatility. It was a set consisting of a Winchester and a Colt chambered for the same cartridge. The second philosophy was military, where the main criterion was maximum effectiveness on the battlefield. Soldiers were armed with a Springfield rifle chambered for a powerful long-range cartridge and a Colt revolver chambered for its equally powerful .45 Colt cartridge. There was no versatility, but each type of weapon performed its task with maximum effectiveness. This choice between convenience and power determined the tactics and capabilities of the shooter. A settler with a Winchester could fight off robbers, but could not withstand a detachment of soldiers. The soldier, on the other hand, was armed to fight a full-fledged battle at any distance. The reality of the Wild West was that there was no single ideal weapon. There was a set of tools, each suited to its specific task, and the choice of these tools depended on who you were, a cowboy, a soldier, or a bison hunter. In Hollywood movies, weapons always work flawlessly. In the reality of the Wild West in the era of black powder, reliability was one of the most important characteristics. A weapon that misfired at a critical moment cost its owner his life. The main problem at that time was black powder. When burned, it left a huge amount of carbon deposits, solid combustion products that contaminated the weapon's mechanism. After several dozen shots, any mechanism could jam. That is why simple and reliable designs were valued more than complex and technologically advanced ones. The Springfield trapdoor single-shot rifle was the benchmark for reliability. Its mechanism consisted of only a few large parts that were easy to clean and insensitive to contamination. The same can be said about the Colt Peacemaker revolver. Its simple and durable design was designed for the harshest conditions. It continued to work even when covered with a layer of dust and dirt. Multi-shot systems, such as the Winchester, were more complex. The lever-action reloading mechanism, with a feeder and extractor, had more small parts that were more sensitive to carbon deposits and dirt. Without proper care, the Winchester could malfunction. This problem was particularly acute in Army conditions. During prolonged combat, soldiers did not have the opportunity to clean their weapons. Therefore, the military preferred the simple and indestructible Springfield design, which was guaranteed to fire in any situation. The quality of ammunition also played a huge role. Cartridges at that time were loaded by hand or using primitive equipment. Uneven powder charges or poor quality caps could lead to misfires or weak shots. The materials used to manufacture the weapons also affected their reliability. Colt, Springfield, and Smith & Wesson all used high-quality steel and precision machining. This ensured a long service life and reliability. Cleaning weapons was a mandatory ritual for any shooter. After each shooting, the barrel and mechanism had to be thoroughly cleaned of carbon deposits with hot water and oil. Neglecting this procedure quickly rendered the weapon unusable. Thus, in the reality of the Wild West, it was not the fastest firing or most technologically advanced weapons that survived, but the most reliable ones. The ability to fire a shot when needed was valued above all else. And in this respect, simple single-shot systems often outperform more complex multi-shot ones. Let's imagine a typical situation in the Wild West. A lone farmer is defending his ranch from an attack by 3 mounted robbers. Let's see how events unfold depending on his weaponry. Scenario 1. The farmer is armed with a Winchester and a Colt chambered for .44-40 cartridges. He sees the horseman approaching at a distance of about 300 meters. He opens fire with the Winchester, but at this range, the weak pistol cartridge is ineffective. The bullets don't reach their target or ricochet off the ground. The robbers continue to approach. The farmer can fire many shots, but they have no effect. When the attackers get within 100-150 meters, the shooting becomes more effective. The farmer can wound 1 or 2 robbers, but his firepower may not be enough to stop their determined attack. In close combat, he will have to rely on his revolver. Scenario 2, the farmer is armed with an army kit, a Springfield rifle, and a Colt revolver. He spots the robbers at the same 300 meters. He takes careful aim and fires the first shot from the Springfield. The powerful .45-70 bullet easily hits the target. One of the attackers is out of the fight. The farmer slowly reloads his rifle while the robbers recover from the surprise. The second shot at a distance of 200-250 meters also hits the target. The second attacker is defeated. The third, seeing the farmer's absolute firepower superiority, will most likely abandon the attack and turn back. This reconstruction clearly shows the difference in tactical capabilities. The Winchester is a weapon for short-range defense, creating a high density of fire. The Springfield is a tool for controlling territory, allowing targets to be destroyed at long range. In real-life situations in the open spaces of the Wild West, it was often the range and power of the shot that were decisive. The ability to hit an enemy before they could get within effective shooting range was key to survival. Therefore, although the Winchester was convenient in a serious confrontation, the advantage was on the side of the owner of a powerful single-shot rifle. Hollywood shootouts, where everyone shoots from the hip on the run, have nothing to do with reality, where one accurate and powerful shot was valued. In summary, it is safe to say that no single weapon conquered the Wild West. It was a complex process in which different tools played their part at different stages. The Hollywood myth of the almighty Winchester is merely a simplification that obscures a much more interesting reality. The 1873 Winchester did indeed become a symbol of the era. It won the hearts and wallets of the civilian population, cowboys, farmers, and settlers. Its convenience, rapid fire, and most importantly, its compatibility with revolver ammunition made it the ideal weapon for everyday life on the frontier. However, in the real war waged by the U.S. Army, the Springfield trapdoor single-shot rifle won. Its incredible power, long range, and phenomenal reliability gave soldiers a decisive advantage in any battle. It was this weapon that asserted the government's control over new territories. The Sharps rifle won the economic war on the Great Plains. By destroying millions of bison herds, it deprived the indigenous peoples of their livelihood and paved the way for the construction of railroads and land development. Its contribution was not tactical, but strategic. The Colt Peacemaker revolver won close combat. It became the standard personal weapon, the last resort and instrument of self-defense for everyone who lived in the Wild West. Its reliability and power made it a legend. The double-barreled shotgun won the war at ultra-short ranges. It protected stagecoaches, banks, and homes, becoming the most effective weapon for maintaining order in the chaos of frontier towns. The reality of the Wild West was about choosing the right tool for the job. Understanding this gives a much deeper and more accurate picture of that complex and great era. Hollywood created a beautiful fairy tale, but the truth, as is often the case, turns out to be much more multifaceted and fascinating. The history of Wild West weapons is a history of compromises between speed, power, convenience, and reliability. And in this history, there was no single champion. We have examined just one of the myths of the Wild West. This era is full of legends that, upon closer inspection, turn out to be much more complex than they seem. Separating truth from fiction is a fascinating process that allows us to better understand how people actually lived and survived in those harsh times. The history of weapons is not just a history of technology. It is a history of tactics, logistics, and human decisions that shape the course of history. And the truth here is often more interesting than any Hollywood script. What other legends of the Wild West or any other historical era would you like us to explore in future episodes? Suggest your topics in the comments, because history is full of unsolved mysteries. And of course, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our new investigations.